Hi, I'm Sam,
Hi, I'm Beliz, and we are Heartbreaker Films.
and today we are watching.
Practical magic.
I don't know why that was my immediate reaction, but yes, that is why. It's a hat. Belize, correct me if I'm wrong. Was this your first time seeing this film?
So, that's what I had thought. As I saw some bits, it did look a little familiar, but I didn't remember it all. So it was basically my first time. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, wow, this is so obviously a Sam film. It just screamed you. Like, I feel like this is a movie that if someone told me you directed this, I would believe it. Like, wow, this explains so much with the different little bits that they have, like dancing naked and that sort of thing. And then I was like, these are all things that Sam wants to do. This is like the family that Sam would want to live in. Same thing with like the night where they wake up and they're having margaritas at midnight, and I was like, this is so her vibe. I feel like this is literally, if it wasn't, except for the plot part, the actual family and the atmosphere is like how you would want to live your life in that kind of house. And especially what they were describing at the beginning, the sisters, which is what I thought was going to happen, was the idea of like, we're gonna live together and grow old together and have a bunch of cats. I was like, this is literally what Sam and I want to do.
First of all, you complimented the hell out of me. Second of all, this movie is what I pulled a lot from for my thesis for grad school, actually. And we'll get into it. What's funny is that a lot of the notes I took for this movie, you just mentioned, like the margarita night and stuff like that. Like when I tell you, so to all people that are watching this right now, me and Belize have talked about like, you know, living in an apartment together, having a home together. Like I imagine myself signing a property. I imagine myself going into escrow with you over like a marital partner. And I don't know why, like I just really see myself buying a house with you. But when I say I want to buy a house with you, I want to buy this house. I want to live in this house. I want people in the neighborhood to walk past, and you and I are like having breakfast in the garden, and we're like, oh, hello, what's up? You know, like, come by for Halloween, where me and Belize jump off the roof and fly. Point is, so yes, I agree. I'm with you 100%. The margarita thing, I literally have it in my notes to ask you about that because I was like, can we do this? Like, can we do this, please? Like, I would just love, like, put the lime in the coconut and drink it all up. I believe that the romance of this film lies in the family and not in the man. I was wondering, do you think you could logline this film?
Okay, I feel like you're gonna probably do it better, but I'll try. I guess it would be that cursed by their ancestor. These two sisters, Jillian and Sally, treat the concept of love very differently their whole lives, but I don't know if that was a proper sentence.
I think you're there. That's kind of similar to what I have. What I have is this: is like, after being scorned by her lover, Maria Owens curses all men who fall in love with the women of her family line. Now it falls on sisters Sally and Jillian Owens to break the curse and finally live a life of love. Vibe of film we love. This is some cottagecore, like just fun little witchy Wicca, like Huga film. It's just a sweet film. It's so sweet. I think that well, let's first talk about the characters, like who is involved in this story.
The two main ones are going to be Sally and Jilly. You kind of see the different ways that they take their reaction to the curses.
I want to vibe on Jillian and Sally real quick. What I think is so interesting about those two girls is that they are perfect foils for each other in terms of like their belief in love. So like when they're little girls, I don't know if you noticed this, when like they're little girls and they're sitting on the stairs watching their aunts do that like witch spell for the neighbor because she's obsessed with a guy. Sally, as a little girl, says to Jillian, I never want to fall in love. And Jillian says, I can't wait to fall in love. And then through the rest of the film, that's just kind of how they vibe with it. Like Jillian gets turned on by the danger of love, whereas Sally gets like more withdrawn and afraid of getting her heart broken. So we have Sally and Jillian, and then let's talk about the aunts.
Yeah, I loved that Stalker Channing from Grease is in this. I saw her name at the beginning of the credits and I was like, what?
The aunts are, we don't really know how they're related to them, but they're just the aunts. And they take care of the girls once their mother and father dies, which we'll get to in the plot summary. But these ladies are like the purest forms of what you believe to be a witch.
I love the aunts. Honestly, it was occurring to me at one point. I was like, so are these aunts sisters, or are they like, they're the aunts, but they're like together? Because I wasn't quite sure. And I feel like it could be either.
It could be either. They don't specify shit. Like, they do say that at one point. I think what it is that, like, if they are together, it's because they've chosen just to not be with anyone, because they both have stories of lovers in the past that have died. So essentially, like, just to get this out of the way, the main plot of the film is that there's a curse that's fallen on these women, that any man who ever falls in love with a woman in this family will die, regardless of anything. And every single person has had this fall upon them. So we have the aunts, and then we have Jimmy Angelo, who she describes as a Dracula cowboy, and tell me that's not the perfect description of this man.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like they picked a really good villain depiction of it, where I did really like some of the tactics that he was doing, like in the car and stuff like that, where he was trying to act like he's trying to trick Sally almost into being like more relaxed with everything in the drive and stuff like that, and like talking a certain way to like calm her down and make it seem like he's not the bad guy, even though he's like literally threatening both their lives. He's like got a very like chill mannerism the whole time too. That's almost trying to like trick you into being like, yeah, relax, like everything's fine, I'm not a bad guy. And then that's like when he's gonna get you.
Why do you think they do that?
I think that that's the perfect way of showing me that that's how he was in the relationship, and that's why Jilly stayed and like loved him and everything like that, because he's making it, and because he's making it seem like they're the crazy ones.
It's the perfect depiction of a toxic man. Like, everything this man does is so outlandishly cruel and awful, but at the same time, like, it's a very good modern day villain, I'd say. Like, it's not outside of the realm of possibility in your life as a woman on the dating scene to meet someone of that caliber. It's not. And that's what's so horrifying about him, personally, in my opinion, is that, like, you know, he's not like a warlock, he's just a person. And then contrasting him, let's talk about who we have as the love interest. So that's our antagonist, that's our villain. Who's our love interest?
Officer Gary. And so he's the one that actually is basically from Sally's spell. Yeah, so she casts a spell at the beginning when she's really young as her reaction to hearing all of this, and basically creates what would be the perfect man for, you know, at that age especially, and describes him in a way where it's like he does not exist, and therefore I can never have my heart broken.
That scene is so pure. That scene is so pure. It's like a little girl's idea of what a perfect human being would be. You know, just someone kind and fun and supportive and loving and almost dreamlike. And then I feel like as we get older, our practical side starts like manipulating what we want in men, or like just how much we get hurt starts manipulating like what we can expect from a lover. And so I think it's so interesting that that line exists where it's like, the man I dreamt up doesn't exist, and if he doesn't exist, I can never get my heart broken. What do you think about the fact that Sally's kids look exactly like her and Jillian?
I feel like that was a very smart way to make it be like, no, see, like we do have gingers in her.
I think it's also interesting because it's like they are paralleling perfectly what the girls went through, except so Jillian and Sally's mother passed away shortly after their father passed away, and she died from a broken heart, and that's what sends them to live with the aunts at a young age. In the polar opposite manner, Sally's kids go to live with the aunts with Sally after her first husband dies. And I think it's a good lesson to us as human beings, where it's like, after you lose the love of your life, you have two options. You can let the heartache consume you into oblivion, or you can pick yourself up and heal yourself from within. And so Sally's kids have the fortunate experience of coming from someone who chose the latter of the two options. So it's almost like we're seeing a parallel universe of like how Jillian and Sally could have grown up.
it almost seems like they're part of the curse is that they're doomed to always be repeating. So that would make a lot of sense as to why the sisters always look like the sisters before them and that sort of thing as well.
I love that you touched upon that, because can we talk about the curse? So the curse itself is any man who falls in love with an Owens woman is doomed to die. But it originally started off as that Maria just didn't want to feel heartache anymore. So she just didn't want to fall in love ever again. So it manipulated over time. So she kind of was like Sally, where Sally's like, I don't want to fall in love. I feel like the curse only breaks because rather than pursuing a romantic love, the women focus on the love of their families and like complete self-sacrifice. And so in saving Jillian, in like bringing all the women in the town together, they break the curse because they prove that they are greater than love, pain, strength, whatever. Is that the love that they share for each other is strong enough to break anything. And I think that's what cuts the curse off.
So Maria is essentially banished, and they make it seem a lot like the reason why she's called a witch, that she's banished, any of these things, is because the women in town don't want her around their husbands. And so it makes a lot of sense that it would take the women in town to come and accept them and help them to break the curse because they have changed their ways in that sense.
Can we talk about the town really quick and how like, because in Bewitched, okay, I love the rules of magical worlds so intensely. In Bewitched, they're doing magic all over the place and like, they don't care what anyone sees. In this world, they live in a world where people know that they're witches. They treat them like garbage, but they know that they're witches. Like Sally just stirring her coffee in the shop like it's nothing. You know, like I think that's so cool. It's almost like a modern day Salem.
They just stayed in this town where they're known as witches. They didn't move away. These ants just stayed there. I feel like they were really enjoying it almost when they're out in the town and people are reacting to them, or they just walk in the middle of the street and it's like, yeah, like move kind of thing.
I think they almost play it up more. Like at the end of the film, when you see all the ladies on top of their roof, like they're dressed, that's why I'm wearing my little hat. They're dressed with like multicolored stockings and like the pointy hat and like all the bullshit that you think about when you think of like witches. And I think that the aunts love it. They're like, you know what? I'm not gonna let you make me feel inferior. So if you don't like me, that's fine. Like I'll give you a reason not to like me. You know what I'm trying to say? But what I love so deeply about, like, I'm obsessed with witchcraft. I'm obsessed with Wiccans. I love it. I love it so much. When they're like, no, don't take my kids to the full moon, like whatever, the solstice festival. And they're like, oh, but we can't, like we're on the board of directors. And she's like, fine, but no dancing naked under the moonlight. And the aunt is like, oh, Sally, the nudity is completely optional, as you well remember. What I love so deeply about the practical effects of the magic in this film is that it's so charged with femininity and like Mother Nature. Like I feel like the creators of this movie really took into account like, okay, where does the bloodline stem from? Where does their power stem from? The leaves, the flowers, the blood, like the blood to blood, the killing of the bird for the curse of the love potion, like it screams that the Owens women come from the earth, that like witches are a natural entity that's just a bloodline that comes from Mother Earth. And I love it.
That is a lot of where the fear of women that then cause them to be called witches comes from, is this fear of these women who are so scandalous, who are embracing their sexuality and not afraid of it, comes from. So it makes a lot of sense that then the original one is, you know, she's not afraid of her sexuality, and so that's why they kind of just call her a witch and outcast her, and then when they can't kill her off, they banish her because they are afraid of that sort of idea. And I feel like it's so fun that they do that, and then so I feel like they make it from a very historical sense. It makes a lot of sense, and which is why it's practical magic, right? It's very practical. It makes a lot of sense in our world. I would believe it. And I love that too, because then when Jilly does come to like the meeting, for example, she's like, you know, like lock up your husbands or something like that, like you watch out, like sort of thing. And she makes fun of that view of them because that's just the view that has always been had of witches by other women or men of the church.
Because they don't follow the same structures of rules as like people who are like these God-fearing like Puritans. Like if it brings you pleasure and kindness and love, there's nothing wrong with it. At the beginning of the film, you see this crazy woman come to the aunt's house, like begging them desperately, like he needs to love me. And the aunts are like, be careful what you wish for. And then you see Sally come later, and she's the same kind of woman clawing at the window saying he needs to come back, he needs to be here. Can we talk about the concept of love within this film? Let's phrase it as this. How do you feel about what the aunts did with Sally and her husband?
I feel like normally under other circumstances I wouldn't condone it, but with the way the curse is, it makes a lot of sense because it's one of those things where it's almost like it seems foolproof, right? Like where it's like if it's this fake love, if you're fake happy, it's never gonna be broken. It's not okay with me, you know what I mean? It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, that's so sweet of you, thank you. But I understand where they're coming from with this idea of like, hey, at least this way you won't die, like you're not losing someone. It's not going to be someone that you love fully and purely, but you're not losing someone. You have a happy family, you have children, you love, and everything like that. So I get where they're coming from with that. It seems like a very good loophole idea.
I like the way you're phrasing it because I didn't see it in that nature. I saw it more along the lines of like she was so afraid to get her heart broken that she was ruining her own life. That she was so desperately afraid of love that she would rather live in complete isolation with her aunts, like, and just not experience life. So I love the fact of what you're saying with this loophole thing where it's like, you have to experience love. I think one of the main meanings, like, well, I think there are multiple versions of love that are being touched upon in this film, but something I really enjoy is that in this film, love equals agony. I've seen this film so many times that something I picked up on this go around is that this film is a perfect dissection of the difference between love and obsession. Obsession is in the form of Jillian, is in the form of her husband, is in the form of the women in the town, and is in the form of Jimmy Angelov. Obsession is infatuation. Obsession is possessive. Obsession is manipulative. Obsession is cruel. Obsession is trying to keep you down so that you can be close. And that's all that Jimmy does with Jillian. Like when we see Jillian at the beginning of this film, she's full of fire. And then when we see her, when Sally goes to the rescue, she's a little thing in the corner with a bruise on her eye. Like that's not Jillian. That's what Jimmy Angelov did to Jillian because he was so freaking obsessed with her. And then when we see Sally with the husband, there's that iconic, let's talk about it, the iconic, like, the kiss.
Because I felt two simultaneous things. I loved it so much. I loved the song, this kiss, and like the little wraparound, like of the shot, like they made a perfect kiss. And immediately after, I was very confused because obviously I didn't know at the time that it was a spell. So I was just like, you didn't even talk? You're just like, that's great, that's romantic, but like, why, what? I'm kind of thrown off by Sally doing something like that, which I know is like the intent with it, but I think that since they could have fun with that moment, since it is a spell, I think they did a really good job of it, where it's just she literally leaps into his arms, and I love it so much. It almost is interesting in that way that the only time we see that kind of love, the picture perfect kind of love, is when it's literally a spell. The only time that we see anything iconic is that kiss, and it's because it's a spell. So I feel like that's a very great commentary as well on our idea of love and how we always see love being depicted.
We see love as supposed to be like fiery, passionate. We see love as supposed to be this thing that like comes in and shifts our planetary view for the rest of time. Buddhists say that when you meet someone and your heart's on fire and you can't breathe and you start to sweat and everything is so exciting, that's not your soulmate. Your soulmate is someone that is calm. Your soulmate is someone who's going to come into your life and be pure, you know? And this time around watching this film, I really overanalyzed like everything Sally said in regards to the Officer Gary. And so if obsession is Jimmy, Angela, and Jillian and Sally, when Jillian comes back and she senses that something's wrong with Sally and she touches the brim of her nose and they're just in bed together, just laughing, cuddling, and talking, that's love. The second she meets Officer Gary and she like declares out loud to Jillian, like, I can't lie to him. And she eventually just tells him the truth because she's like, I can't lie to him because she loves him. She's honest. And then when they come together at the end, it is soft, it is pure, it is calm. But like, you know, when you're a little kid, like, I don't know if you ever did this, but I definitely did. Like when I was a little kid and I was super sad and just like lonely, I would lie in bed at night and think about like my future partner. You know, I'd like sit there and like, you know, be sad, and I would just like picture to myself, like, I wonder what I'm gonna be like one day when I'm in my 30s and I'm like so and so. So there's like this parallel image in the film when the girls, when they set off that spell into the universe. At the beginning of the film, she has the basket of flowers and they go up into the moon. And then when we meet Gary and we find out that he was the guy from the spell, we see that parallel image of a little boy on a horse and the flowers are falling on him. And so it's not that she created him. She summoned him. She like called to him. And I thought that was so beautiful. And I think in a weird way, like in a butterfly effect, we all kind of do that, you know? We all kind of do that to our partners. And it's interesting. Something I love about this film is that it very much proves that there is love after love. Oh my God, I'm a Cher song. Do you believe in love after loss? What are your thoughts on the idea of like the love though, of him as a love interest? Like,
honestly, yeah, because I agree with you that the sister love and the whole familial love in general is the more important love of the story. That not that I'm not invested in his love with her, but it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, they'll be together. Like you can tell really quickly, and I was like, yeah, that'll work out. And that was kind of it. Like beyond that, I was just like, you know, it's a matter of when kind of thing. But that wasn't as interesting to me as showing the love of like the sisters, and then the fact that the town comes around. Like that to me was a lot cooler to see the shift in the town's, I guess, love for that family compared to how they are at the very beginning, how they are when they're giving the officer all these, you know, little views, and how they are when they actually are called to come and help.
But why do you think the town helps them?
I think this is the first time that they're actually asking for help. I think the women are coming through because I think the view on witches has changed now compared to how it used to be. I think women are more into that idea, or a lot more open to that idea, because it is so romanticized with Halloween and everything like that. And also I just think that they're exactly with the hat. And also I just think that they want to help another woman who's in danger.
I think also there's just a lot of like jealousy from not being able to be powerful like a witch, you know what I mean? Like if you don't have something, like I feel like that often happens with people in any witchcraft film, is the people who hate them are just jealous that they're not them. And so they make them feel like other, which is something that like is very good to know in terms of bullies in general. Bullies usually hate on you for the thing about you that they wish they had. You know, like if you dissect any bullying film, but I think the number one reason the girls come together is because what woman hasn't been with a shit guy? Or like hasn't been strung out? Like I think one of the women literally says like, wow, I've been strung out on a guy before, but never like this. I think that was so wholesome, how they're all just like hitting each other up like, hey, Gillian Owens, like, I think she was in like this really toxic, abusive thing, and like he won't leave her alone. Like they just really need our help. And all the women like girl power, like, okay, fuck yeah, because like whoever like defends anyone in that regard, you know?
Right, because suddenly the woman who's seen as all powerful and scary is helpless.
We talk about some of the visual images of the film that are just like very beautiful. I think that this film's like cinematography is so aesthetically pleasing, and specifically I'm talking about Jillian driving all throughout the night and day, listening to Joni Mitchell on her way to see Sally. It's so beautiful and effervescent, and it's just like, oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, I loved the little apple bits that they do too, where whenever there's something that's stressful going on or like a big event, apples fall onto the floor. like when he gets hit by the car and we see all the apples, because we know what apples represent in terms of Halloween and the witch factor and everything like that. So we just see like the crate of apples all fall onto the floor. And then when Sally and Jilly are in the kitchen and they're fighting, the thing that drops is a bunch of, like, I think it's like a glass bowl of apples. Honestly, I'm surprised that instead of a rose bush, it's on an apple tree that grows in the backyard, because I feel like they just use that as a symbol of trouble in a way.
I feel like there has to be some kind of symbolism with the roses. Like, I really want to dig into that intensely. Like, I've always viewed roses as like passion or like love. But I guess in this regard, it's almost like crimson, like a scarlet letter. Like, it's like scarlet letter on their house. So it's like, I know what you did. Something also that I love is that like the camera moves and manipulates the universe almost as if the atmosphere itself is like Jimmy Angelov watching them. Like during the margarita scene, like when they find the bottle of tequila that they left on the porch, like the camera moves in and out of the room in such a manner and like scoots around the house in such a way that like his spirit is watching them. And it's almost like spooky for a film that's not really scary. I also love the motif of dancing in this film. Dance is like very freeing in this movie. Like Jillian dances when she sees the women. It's almost like a sexual thing. You see the husband and Sally and their kids dancing when they're all happy. And then you see like the huge expression of that in the margarita scene. And it just feels very freeing. It feels like magic is freedom.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, if we go back to like the historical representation, because I think that they did a lot of this in mind with that, because of the way that they even have the origin of their curse and where it comes from and everything like that. Like, it makes a lot of sense that it includes freedom, and that's why they're almost called witches, because it's these women who believe in freedom and are more feminists. I have one little other imagery note that I also thought was fun, because honestly, I've been meaning to for a while, and I do want to properly do it because I only spent a little bit of time last night looking into more of like the historical aspect of witches and where that all comes from, because I know so little about it and I deeply want to. But I did love that little bit of when those brooms are being used to sweep out the spirit and the ashes and everything like that, because I was like, wow, I love that this broom is being used for that. I love that this whole idea of what that symbol is it's still like in a dark way, but it's like it's very practical there, that's what it's being used for. I thought that was a really cute little imagery.
I just love so deeply how they like personify the witch in this film. Like, she very much is like the old hag with the cauldron type of bullshit that we were growing up on, whatever. Like, it just very much is like, imagine if the witches from Salem survived.
I guess, yeah. So what would you do differently if you were to remake this?
If I was going to remake this, I wouldn't have been so Huga. If I was going to remake this movie, I would really play up the storyline of Jimmy's death and like the will he or will he not find out, like, kind of thrill to the plot. Because in this film, it's not really like that. It's not really important. It's more just like a catalyst for him to be in the town to meet her than like, I'm gonna find out, because she's like, okay, that's fine, I'll tell you everything. I don't want a lawyer. Like, I don't want to lie to you.
Right. Would you have like an actual trial, do you think?
No, I just would have made it so that she wasn't telling him the truth, but I wouldn't make her like run to him to like to tell him everything. I would have made it so that he would have had to work a little harder to earn her trust. I feel like his just presence immediately earns her trust, and the fact that her kids are like, oh, the star, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that the kids trust him is what makes her think like, oh, I'm fine, that's the whole point of the movie. It's Huga, it's cute, I want to read the book that it's based off of 100%, but if I was gonna do this, that man would have to jump through a couple more hoops. What would you have done differently?
I think what I would have done different, because I love the amount of it that makes historical sense in terms of the different reasons why women were identified to be witches and why that was not okay. And it's not the idea of just like casting spells, the idea of women at that time, and why, then this is why literally it's a broomstick that represents their symbol, is that these are women that aren't domestic, and these are women that are too in touch with their sexuality. And that's why it's a broomstick, because it's a broomstick to be cleaning the house. Like, you have your place in the house and it's to clean it and to cook it and be like the housewife. But it's also showing the broomstick because it's showing that they're riding the broomstick, which is the whole sexuality part that they are too in touch with, which is also making the church and other women and other men uncomfortable. And that's where that symbol comes from. And that was a big issue with women at that time, and still, I would say, still now even. And that's why they're such feminist icons. So I think they do a brilliant job with showing the aspect of like the sexuality aspect, because they do the whole like, oh, like watch out for your husbands and that sort of thing. I feel like they do that part really well in terms of showing that aspect of why these women were shunned. I would have loved to see a little bit more of like them not being domestic, and that also being part of why they're kind of shunned. Like, they don't, you know what I mean? Like, just a little bit more of a call to it. I know it's one of those things where nowadays things are done where it's almost on the nose when you point out those things, but I would kind of make it slightly more that, to just really drill in why like society is uncomfortable with women like this. And I feel like that way you would also like relate to them a lot more. And so it's not just their view of love that you're relating to, you're also relating to the fact that these women who are independent with their sexuality, independent with how they go about their relationships, everything, are like forces to be reckoned with. And that's why they're called witches, not just because they have magic.
Okay, I think your aspect of the film and my aspect of the film actually would have vibed really well in a remake of this movie. What do you think of watchability?
I think watchability is going to be a good like 8 out of 10 for me. I thought it was a really solid film. I really loved the vibe the whole time. Like, quite frankly, I don't know if everyone's gonna feel this way, but like I think I really enjoyed it because I did see a lot of the aspects of family and stuff like that that I can relate to, and also that I like want to have. And I'm just like, I want to live in this house. I want to do those things of dancing under the moonlight and have the margarita cauldron and everything like that. So I thought it was really fun.
Same reasoning. I'd give it an 8.5. I give it an 8.59. Just for how much it like really hits home for me. I think it's definitely a sleepover film. It's just really sweet. It's good for all ages. Like, it's very family friendly. And then I think this is our last family friendly film for the spooky season. What's our next movie gonna be?
Okay, yay. So we're delving more into the horror aspect of October. We are going to go into my favorite horror film of all time, I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Bum, bum, bum.
You haven't seen this before, Sam, right?
I've never seen this movie. I've never seen this movie before.
Okay, so I'm very excited to see what you think of this movie. So that tune in next week. Make sure you guys check it out.
And remember, again, follow our socials. And I'm Sam.
I'm Belize.
And this has been Heartbreaker Films. Thank you so much. See you next week.